Welcome to the WanderLearn podcast. I'm your host, France Tapon. This is a short introduction to this episode, which is part of a 7-part series with a Mozambican who is named JulioMuhorro. He is a power coach, facilitator, and speaker from Mozambique. Make sure you listen to the other episodes if you've missed them. And this episode, by the way, is brought to you by my patrons at patreon.com/ftapon. Go there and get some rewards. Thanks. One of the things that struck me when we first met is how amazing your command of English is. And the majority of Africans don't speak English as well as you do, with some exceptions. You have, like in Kenya, you have some really strong English speakers in Kenya. Of course, in South Africa, you do as well. But in Mozambique, especially up in the north where you're from, it's pretty fucking rare. So can you tell us how you got to speak English so well?
Yeah, sure. First, thank you so much. It really means a lot coming from a native English speaking. So I actually learned to speak English playing video games. I was blessed enough to have a PS, and I had this one game that was like a role-playing game, and I need to figure out some riddles and stuff. And on top of that, I did study in a private school where you had the 5 levels of English, so you could be like intermediate plus advanced thing. So I did that. And with all the travels, and because I do like to know about other cultures, English is pretty much a universal language. And by talking, playing video games in school, a combination of that, and then working in an environment where English was key to just survive in the business, it made sense. And that's how I got my English flair.
What about watching movies with subtitles?
I don't like doing that because I get distracted with the subtitles, and usually what the people are saying is not what is being written, and I get stuck in that translation. So I just watch the movies without subtitles most of the times.
Interesting. So what was this game on PlayStation that you were playing?
It was called Breath of Fire 3. It was like this, by the way, this was like the PS1, not the PS5. Okay. So the graphics were like horrible, but they had like quite interesting riddles. And I remember I have my dictionary while I was playing the game because I didn't know a word. And then if I was to ask my siblings, they go like, no, you are having English lessons. Grab your dictionary, figure it out. That's how I learned it, like really how I learned it.
Okay, so now let's focus in on the differences. The thing I'm focusing on my book, The Unseen Africa, is about the similarities and differences throughout the continent. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of I like to delve into that. So what we're going to talk about is the differences and similarities between the north of Mozambique and the south, where the capital is. And then similarly, we want to talk about the similarities and differences between South Africa and Mozambique, 2 neighboring countries. So and then finally, we'll move on to other places, because you've traveled all over Southern Africa. You've traveled all over East Africa as well. And so we're going to, again, look at some of the similarities and differences of those regions between each other. So let's start off with the first thing, which is similarities and differences between northern Mozambique and southern Mozambique. And especially, I mean, the capital, Maputo, I actually never got to go to the capital. I was only up in the north.
Oh.
But yeah, I know.
You missed quite a fun.
Okay. All right, I know. I've missed a lot of things. But anyway, so go ahead. And by the way, I will tell you what I've read about the capital. I've not seen a single picture of Maputo. But
really?
But people described it as kind of a regal capital that you can see the colonial past of the Portuguese and in the architecture and the buildings, but that it's decaying, that it's not kept for as much as it should be. That's what I've read. So is that true or false?
I think that's partially true. Especially, it used to be that in like early 20s, the buildings were like just decaying completely. But in the last 20 years, the local municipality made an effort to at least give it like a facelift on the outside, even though on the inside, most of the buildings are still like destroyed. The main commonality aside I guess within all of the territory of Mozambique, the official language is Portuguese, but we have tons of local languages. So it's not... I was born in the north. That doesn't mean that I know the local language that people speak in Maputo, which is Sangana. And in the north, we speak Makua. So there is that as a differentiator. And I think... How many languages?
I
don't know, but I know for sure it's more than 10 20? Because around there, because we have 11 provinces, and at least each province has 2 main local languages. Plus the small, like really like village language that people also speak there. And the thing is, like with many languages, as you are traveling, you can sort of understand each other, but then the farther you go from where you started, things are just completely lost, right? But that's one. And two, I guess, comes down to, let's talk about nature a little bit, because even like nature-wise, they're quite different. So if you go in terms of the beaches in the south, they're usually green waters with golden sand. And as upper you go to the north, they get to be like white beach, sand and blue waters, pretty much like the Maldives. That's what you get in the north of Mozambique. And there is also a huge influence between the Arabs and the Portuguese. People who knows Mozambique, they often think that was just colonized by the Portuguese. It was, but before that, Mozambique has a long history of trade with the Middle Eastern. So in the north, the majority of the population is Arab, and if you actually go to the Mozambique island, which was the first capital of the country, you see literally like a mixture between Arab and Portuguese architecture in the city, pretty much like you have in some places in Turkey, where you can see the different influences that different cultures had on the place. But then as you're going down to the south, the country was heavily influenced by the Portuguese. So even the architecture, the language, the religion goes way more to what the Portuguese do. And actually in the center is a quite interesting mix, because you have both, and you have actually more of African religions playing in that central region of the country.
Have you been to Zanzibar in Tanzania?
I have.
Okay. So would you say that Zanzibar, because that's a perfect mix of like African and Middle Eastern, kind of, I don't know if it's perfect mix, but it is a mix.
It's a great mix.
And right. And so then you have, I imagine, I haven't been all over northern Mozambique, but I imagine, would you say there's similarities in that sense?
They are, especially with the islands. Like the island of Mozambique is like a miniature of Zanzibar in terms of many things. And I think as you go more to the interior of the country, so going away from the coast, then maybe you see less of Arab influence, and then you have more of Portuguese influence in the country. And you can literally see that, like, as you're traveling, you will see with the buildings and how the cities are organized and stuff, you really see the difference between the two of them.
Do you speak Swahili?
No.
Okay. So I wonder if, like, because Swahili is popular just north of Mozambique.
Yeah, but that's like on the upper north in Cabo Delgado province or Pemba city that most people might know of for the beautiful beaches, because it's really neighboring with Tanzania. So the local language is quite similar as well. But in Nampula, where I'm from, the local language is Makua, and it's pretty much a Nampula language that people speak.
Is there any kind of rivalry between the north and the south and the middle of Mozambique?
Like in any places there's like few characteristics that people say. So usually people on the north, they are deemed to be beautiful and seductive. People in the center in Inhambane, they're actually deemed to be the good people of the country, like very welcoming. They do amazing in tourists because they're really service oriented. People in the south, usually they are known for being quite active and smart and get going, busy going big city things. And so in different provinces, we have different characteristics. I wouldn't call it per se a rivalry, but there is this sense of the other provinces that, everything that comes to Mozambique stays in the capital. It never reaches the provinces. There is this sense, while people in the capital think that, the most beautiful things are outside of the capital and not in the capital. But I think it's a duality most of us live in any countries.
And that ends this episode of the WanderLearn podcast, where we explore travel, technology, and transformation. If you'd like to see the show notes with links to what we've talked about, go to WanderLearn.com and click on this episode. If you'd like to connect with me, just remember Tapon. That's my first initial and my last name. Tapon is always my social media username. My website is ftapon.com. Do you want to leave me an anonymous voicemail where you can make a comment or ask a question? Then go to speakpipe.com/ftapon. Furthermore, if you'd like to get rewarded for supporting my projects, then go to patreon.com/ftapon. That's where you can pick up some remarkable rewards for as little as $2 a month. Now, 5 quick favors. Number 1, subscribe to the WanderLearn podcast. 2, download it. 3, share it. 4, review it. And 5, sign up for my newsletter at wanderlearn.com. Our theme music was composed by Eric Stratman. This is Francis Tapon, encouraging you to wander and learn.